Israel and Palestine have been embroiled in a devastating war of weapons and narratives for decades now. But ever since Hamas launched a fatal lightning strike on southern Israel a few weeks ago, it seemed like the war on Hamas-controlled Gaza is about to reach a tipping point. This time, it looks like there's a broader sense of finality about the long-lasting conflict, with both sides treating the current attacks as a life-or-death situation. And with the Russia-Ukraine war from 2022 still raging on, the fallout from Israel's war on Hamas could have long-lasting negative effects on the global economy. So let's get into why this could be the case, what the repercussions could be, and if the world can truly avoid the consequences. Before we go into the effects of the Israel-Palestine war on the global economy, we need to understand how the conflict between Israel and Palestine actually began. And to do that, we need to first go back to the time before 1948, when the Jewish state of Israel was declared as independent from Arab Palestine. Although Jewish people had lived in the area currently known as Israel for centuries, various decades of conflict meant that they quickly became dispersed across Europe and Asia. But a 19th century rise of Zionism saw the increased advocacy for a Jewish homeland, and Jewish people began acquiring land to settle in Palestine. Following World War I, and especially II, many Jews relocated to Palestine in the Middle East. And in 1947, the United Nations approved a partition plan into two independent states. That triggered a 5-month civil war, which eventually led to the declaration of the State of Israel. After Israel became recognized as an independent nation, there was another almost 10-month-long war in 1948 called the Arab-Israeli War, which resulted in Israel keeping their territory from the 1947 partition plan, as well as capturing about 60% of the territory allotted to the Arab state, including West Jerusalem. Over half the Palestinian population were expelled from their homes in what is referred to as the Nakba, or catastrophe, but they were able to hold on to the Gaza Strip to the southwest and the West Bank to the east, with Israeli-captured territory sandwiched in between. Also during this time, hundreds of thousands of Jews from neighboring Arab states moved into Israel, and this was the beginning of a conflict that eventually led to the creation of Hamas. Hamas was formed out of an Islamic charity that eventually rose to prominence as an activist group in 1987 after the First Intifada against Israel. They quickly became involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and advocated for armed Palestinian resistance. They also sought to reclaim the land which Israel had taken from Palestine decades earlier. And while these moves brought them popularity among the Palestinians, their plans allegedly included intentions to promote a jihad against Israel. By 2007, Hamas had captured the Gaza Strip from the Palestinian Authority. Israel still maintained control of the border surrounding Gaza, including the airspace and the seashore. By this time, nearly the entire West began to regard Hamas as a terrorist organization as a result of their numerous attacks on this blockade. Ever since the rise of Hamas, Israel has found something of a reinvigorated spirit of disdain towards efforts aimed at granting Palestine anything that resembles freedom, especially if it was being led by Hamas. And ever since, any efforts by Hamas or other Palestinian resistance fighters to speak up about the conditions of the people of Palestine has been met with hostility from the Israeli state. So when Hamas launched a surprise attack on the 7th of October 2023, the Israeli government finally found a motive to strike back on Gaza.
נכה אימת חורמה וננקום בעוצמה על היום השחור הזה שהם הוללו למדינת ישראל ולאזרחיה.
The results have been devastating, with thousands of lives lost and Gaza almost reduced to rubble. Hamas have tried to strike back, but to less effect due to Israel's Iron Dome, and with each passing day it seems Israel's attacks get more and more intense. We all know how the war between Russia and Ukraine has affected the world economy. So this begs the question as to how this war between Israel and Hamas, and by design Palestine, could also affect everyone else. Israel is a highly developed economy that mostly relies on technology and services for growth, as they barely have any natural resources to export. But recent discoveries of natural gas reserves may lead to the development of a solid energy sector in the future. Israel also has a highly educated population with strong educational infrastructure, and this has led to the ushering in of a large technological boom. And today, its technology hub, Silicon Wadi, is second only to Silicon Valley in terms of importance, with global corporations consistently investing in Israeli technological startups. Palestine, on the other hand, has suffered in recent years due to multiple blockades imposed by Israel. Before the rise of Hamas, thousands of Palestinians from the West Bank used to be allowed to work in Israel in one capacity or another. But ever since the rise in the bombings, they've been replaced by migrant workers from other nations. And today they are a mostly service-based economy, which mainly depend on imports to sustain their population. In fact, based on costs, they import almost 6 times as much as they export. In the past 10 years, the global economy has grown by around 34%, but Israel has only contributed to 0.4% of that growth, which is less than the likes of Vietnam, but higher than a very stable Switzerland. And that figure is even much worse for Palestine, who barely contribute anything to the global economy and find it increasingly difficult to do so. But direct contribution to the global economy isn't a complete indication of the economic importance of a state, and there are other important factors that come into play. For one, Israel is strategically positioned along the Mediterranean Sea, which is very important to trade between Europe and the Middle East. So any blockade in that region would affect nearly a third of the world's trade. This is, of course, by design. And when it comes to providing services, Israel is up there in the world, with some of the world's largest technological companies setting up bases in Israel for research and development. Palestine, through the Hamas occupation of the Gaza Strip, also holds a significant presence along the Mediterranean Sea, and their proximity to Israel means they've been able to benefit in their service sectors in the past. So both countries might not be the largest producers or have the natural resources to export, but their unique positioning means the world has had to keep an eye on the developments in the ongoing war. Regardless of how much both countries contribute towards the global economy, the amount of damage dealt to both sides would require massive financial assistance to be fixed. Then there's also a great possibility of yet another refugee crisis, with millions of Palestinians fleeing from the war zone into other Middle Eastern nations. This could lead to a strain on infrastructure and resources in those countries, leading to a lower standard of living for the general populace. However, the worst outcome that could come out of this war in terms of the global economy would arguably be a partial blockade of the Mediterranean Sea. But this could probably only happen if Israel decided to take the initiative due to them having superior naval capabilities. It is, however, unlikely at this point that Israel would do something like that, as it would only alienate them from their European allies. So for now, the biggest economical threat from this war would be the thousands of lives lost, billions of dollars in damage, and a refugee crisis. But also, if Israel is unlucky in their battle with Hamas, the world could lose a major technological hub with damages that could cost more than just their weight in dollars. While the war between Israel and Hamas has been devastating, the most affected are the innocent Palestinians, including children who don't really have a say in the situation. We do hope that a ceasefire can be reached, so further destruction is avoided. But what do you think about the current situation in Gaza? Please share your thoughts in the comments below.